Let's have a round of applause for Tania. You might recognise Tania from the Skyline, where she's been doing a great job this week. You've been hosting the One for All. Is it All for One? What is it? Oh, you did it this morning?
Yeah, and then been wandering around site.
Great. You need this mic. Brilliant.
Great.
Not everybody knows your story, Tania. Just if you were going to give a 60-second elevator pitch of your life.
Elevator pitch.
What have you been up to?
Well, I was brought up in a Christian family, left home very, very young, did some not very clever things, ended up in some not very clever places, ended up coming back to faith in my mid-20s and determined that life was going to be different from here on in, and became a pastor and loved that, but then went into more social justice, urban mission stuff, and then have worked in organisations spanning from the Salvation Army all the way through to now working in Westminster and with various other people serving refugees. That's a really potted history.
That was impressive. And we're cheering Tania, we're cheering Jesus' work in her life. It's all good. Tania, we have something in common in that we are both adoptive parents. Tell us a little bit about your adoption journey.
Yeah, I had a really, really positive adoption journey. I determined in the November of 2012 that I felt that this was a God calling. And by February the 26th, the next year, 3 months later, I had a 7-day-old and a 13-month-old in my care, both with some significant needs. My eldest is now 5 and my youngest is 4. My eldest has fetal alcohol syndrome. He has microcephaly, global developmental delay, speech delay, social integration issues. But with all that said, if he was to run in here now, you would look at him and melt. He is adorable, kind, compassionate, and my little one, Charlie, is very, very small of stature. So he's 4 now, and he's still in clothes of a 1.5-year-old. And that's all just to do with, obviously, the being in womb and the gestation period not being a positive one for him, having both of them been born with alcohol and drug addiction.
Wow. I think that deserves a round of applause as well. So impressed by you, Tania, not just for the work that you do, but how you manage home life and work life and all of that together. And somehow, with all this busyness going on, you've written a book. Tell us about that book and what inspired it.
Yeah, I referenced earlier that I had an interesting early journey, having been brought up in a Christian family. I frankly found it quite a dull experience. I'm sorry to say that. And so I thought that, you know, there was answers elsewhere other than the church. And so found myself on the edge of the sex industry, and was doing glamour modeling and some very, you know, believe me, there is nothing glamorous about glamour modeling. So then as I came to faith, as I said, in my mid-20s and just began to kind of unpack some of what had happened in my life, I realized I was still carrying quite a significant amount of shame. And I think when we come to faith, we think it's all going to be okay now. It's all going to change. And I realized actually that transformation, yes, is a work of the Holy Spirit, but it's also, Chris, a choice. And it's a choice to tackle stuff and face stuff and forgive self. And so I wrote a book called Don't Beat Yourself Up, Learning the Wisdom of Kindsight. And I figured, Krish, that actually hindsight is when you look back and think, I wish I'd done. And kindsight is when you look back and think, I did do that, but what have I learnt? And so I've learnt to put all of my fears, failings, fiascos, flops, anything else beginning with F, into a context that says, actually, it's redeemable, good. I am redeemed, and I will continue to still yet stay on the journey of transformation.
I've read this book, and I've endorsed it. And those two things always go together. I never endorse a book that I haven't read. It's not always true. You wouldn't believe that about some books. And I can recommend it to you. We've been having an ongoing discussion this week, actually, about what it is going on that many men are not reading books written by women. And we want to blow that away and say that's a really stupid way of approaching things. This is a book that is great for men and it's great for women. It's a fantastic story. It will draw you in. It will inspire you. And it gives you a way of living positively into the world. So don't beat yourself up. Learning the Wisdom of Hindsight by Tania Wright. It's available here, and she'll sign a copy for you if you want her to. Brilliant. Let's invite one of our next guests up, and then we'll get you talking about some books that have changed your life. I think we'll have Les up next. Les, come and join us. This is Les Moire. Give him a round of applause. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I'm going to run out of chairs. I need another chair in a minute. We'll do that in a second. So you might not know Les, but you know a lot of Les's friends and people that have been inspired by Les to make a difference in the world. Les, tell us a little bit about, as we saw from Tania, a 60-second overview of your life, just to bring people up to speed with who you are and what you do.
Well, I was brought up in the Salvation Army, and surrounded by music, loved music, and then I learned how to worship God and why I should worship God, and became a worshiper. And then I got involved with a lot of the worship songwriters and worship leaders, and I started to make their recordings, and I worked as a record producer, bass player, musical director, and eventually I started to work for a record company called Kingsway, and I worked with Graham Kendrick and Matt Redman and Tim Hughes, those guys, and helped them with their songwriting and get the songs out to the church to worship.
It's very good. So you will see from the back of Les's book, almost everybody you've ever heard of within the worship scene thinks Les is a hero. They just want to write amazing things about him. And you've written this book, Missing Jewel, to try and help the world hear the story. Tell us a bit about what inspired you.
Yes, so Missing Jewel comes from a quote by A.W. Tozer. In 1961, he said, "Missing Jewel is worship is the missing jewel of the evangelical church." And this is really the story of how worship was restored to the UK church, and became such an important thing. And then those songs that came from that time went on to bless the nations. And so it's just an amazing story of what God's done in the UK church over the past 50 years.
Excellent, excellent. Les, tell us about some of the songs that you helped to form. Are you able to do that without breaking too many confidences?
A young man called Graham Kendrick, he brought me this song. The verse was, "Lord, the light of your love is shining," and he sang it to me, but he didn't have a chorus.
He didn't have a chorus?
No.
Okay.
So
you recognise that song, "Lord, the light of your love is shining"? So probably one of the most famous worship songs ever, and you wrote the chorus to "Shine, Jesus, Shine."
I said to him, I said, "Graham, you need to go and write a chorus."
Oh, that's the role of a good mentor and muse, isn't it? Don't do it yourself, get them to do it. Very good, excellent.
Verse is very good. Yeah. And then, it's just the role that I have is basically that people will sing me ideas of songs. And so say, "Les, what do you think?" And I said, "No, that's a great idea." So, and there's some very special moments when Matt Redman first sang me "Blessed Be the Name of the Lord," and you just get the goosebumps, and this is really coming from a very special place. And then about 10 years ago, I was working with a guy called Brenton Brown, and he sang me "Everlasting God" for the first time. And then he sang me, "Les, we've got about 3 choruses." So he sang me each chorus, and I said, "No, you need to go with that one." So it's those kind of, but you're just in that situation where you have to discuss it.
Oh, it's amazing. So we're going to give you an opportunity during our time together. If you've got a song that you would like to sing to Les, then we'll make that opportunity available to you. This is once in a lifetime, 10,000, what was it? "Blessed Be Your Name," "Shine, Jesus, Shine." This could be the next mega hit. If you've got a song you want to sing, we'll give you 30 seconds with a microphone. That can happen. So
there's a good line, Krish, and when people sing you their verses, and it's kind of like a long verse, and you say, "Don't bore us, get to the chorus."
Don't bore us, get to the chorus. That's good.
So,
some songs don't have anything but a chorus anymore. Is that because of you? Is that?
No, actually, what happens is that now, what's happening is that people on the verse they'll have, where you sing about who God is and what He's done, things. And then when you hit the chorus, it's just praise. So, even how great is our God, the verse is about who God is. And then you hit the chorus and they say, how great is our God. Do you mean our 10,000 reasons? The verse is thoughtful, and then you hit the chorus, bless the Lord, oh my soul.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that. Did you notice that before? That formula that sounds harsh, but it's a system. Yeah, I could. How do you feel about this trend of writing bridges to old hymns? Some cynics might say it's a cheap way to get a hit record, but are you positive about them?
Well, my feeling on the old hymns, in Matthew, I think it's 13, it talks about the storehouse owner who brings out treasures old and new.
Yes.
And sometimes the old treasures need to be polished up.
Yes.
A little bit. So if an extra part helps the song come to life more, then I'm for it. And also this whole thing, like I said to you, if you're just singing truth, 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 and you don't have that moment when you can explode, with worship, then it's then I think it doesn't have the power it can have. And that's what the new additions have really been like choruses.
Yeah.
To the thoughtful, meaty hymns.
Excellent. Very good. So there'll be opportunity for you to ask Les a few questions, and obviously Tania a few questions too. I heard of a Christian couple getting married, and they were picking songs for the wedding, and they chose "Oh Lord, the Clouds Are Gathering." I wasn't sure whether that was appropriate. And then when the bride walked in, it was "Led Like a Lamb to the Slaughter." Okay, we'll move on very quickly. Why don't you talk around your tables? Is there a book that you've read that's helped you not just to understand God better, but to worship God better? Is there a book that you've read that has inspired you or helped you to worship God better? Have a little chat around your tables, and we'll talk together in a moment. I'm going to get another chair. So we've just been talking about Les's new book, Missing Jewel, the worship movement that impacted the nations. And I'll just read you, where's he said? Missing Jewel reminds us that God is always at work behind the scenes, chiseling the facets of the jewel until it shines for all to marvel at the glory of the craftsman and his work. And that's a quote by a pastor you might have heard of, Louis Giglio, over there in Atlanta. So I visited his church, and he was speaking, I can't remember the Bible passage, but he spoke for 90 minutes non-stop. And he had the whole audience, mainly of 20s and 30s, just in the palm of his hand. It was fantastic. So that's a really great commendation. So has anyone got a recommendation for us? A book that's helped you to worship God that you've read? Anyone got one? Yes, please. The Shack. Interesting. Did you also have The Shack? Hands up if you had The Shack. Cool. Interesting. It's quite a controversial book. Yeah, the interesting thing about The Shack was no publisher would touch it. And so he had to self-publish. And William Paul Young has just got his film releasing globally in June. And they're expecting kind of big things. It's got a kind of huge budget. I think it's got a lot of people talking about God. And weirdly, it's a bit of a thin sandwich. So the plot happens quite early. And then there's a big dialogue, and then there's a little bit of plot at the end. I'm not going to tell you what the plot is, but a lot of it is just theology, isn't it? And yet he's helped a whole group of people speak about God in fresh and new ways. So yeah, that's interesting. Anyone else got another book they'd recommend that isn't The Shack? Anyone else? Yep. Red Moon Rising. Yes. I think a few people are Pete Greig fans. In fact, two of our guests are going to talk about... Three of our guests are going to talk about Pete Greig. Pete Greig, what a guy. I did a little interview with Pete for the Books for Life series, and he is great, super inspirational. And he can help you get a passion again for reading. So if you're feeling a bit low on your reading, have a look at the Pete Greig interview I did. He's just a brilliant communicator, and he's super passionate. I think his line was, if you don't read, you will always be just a bonsai version of the Christian that you should be. I thought that's nice. That's good, isn't it? So you can grab that. You can download it for free. Show it in your church. If you run a bookshop, get it out to your customers because it will help them come and buy some books from you. Good. Well, let's invite my next guest up. I think we'll have a round of applause for Calver. You will recognise Anne from such places as the Skyline and Main Stage. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
And people know a little bit about you. They know you a bit. They know your husband a bit, but they might not know your story and what you do day by day. Tell us a little bit, 60 seconds. What is your life like?
Where should I start? Well, I'm a Baptist minister in North London.
Well, we need some whoops for Baptist minister. Thank you.
I got ordained about 2 years ago after a really powerful encounter with the Holy Spirit and just knew that God was saying, come on, it's time to step up. And I think that that's really formed a lot of my recent journey, Krish. Was I meant to start with a song, by the way? Oh, no.
if you have a song you want to sing to Liz.
No, I don't sing. We had a really tough time having children. We were told that we wouldn't have any. And so it's a bit of a different story to Tan's, but it's been a really kind of painful, rocky, dark ride with a very hope-filled ending, which I know isn't always true for many. So some of our writing has come out of that. But sort of 9 blood transfusions in the womb with Daniel from about 17 weeks pregnant, and just really going, Lord, where are you in this? Like, when things get really, really tough, like, where are you? And I think just learning actually just to hold on. You know, that whole be still and know. I didn't be still and feel that he was God. I didn't feel anything. It was just be still and know. And through that journey of holding on, I think that's really enriched my faith journey and kind of brought me here where I am today.
It's excellent.
It's just a little bit.
It's really good. Let's have a round of applause for Anne. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing. And the last book I read of yours was one that you wrote with Gav. Is that the latest book that you guys have written?
That is the latest one. Yeah.
Tell us about Game Changers.
Tell you about Game Changers. So last year's Spring Harvest theme, who was here last year or in Skeg? Brilliant. Yeah, so we produced Game Changers, which was the theme for last year, and it's based around the story of Moses and how he encounters God at the burning bush, and then those questions that he has to work through to, you know, who am I and why me? And just, it was really interesting because as we were writing it, I was kind of confidently writing, you know, yeah, and why did he struggle with his identity and blah, blah, blah. And as I journeyed it, I was personally just walking every tiny bit of it. And then obviously he makes that decision to go to Pharaoh, doesn't he? And it's a massive step for him. And then to lead the people, lead the Israelites towards the promised land. And so the book is all around that. So it was about encountering, enlisting in God's plans and joining with others to listen to the voice of the Lord, to kind of go and make a difference in the world. And during that time, I was wrestling over moving house. Gavin had got a job in London working for the Evangelical Alliance, and I was committed to the West Midlands. And I really went through this wrestle, and I felt God say, Anne, you're writing a book on game changers, but are you willing to change the game? And I just went, no. I really don't want to. I'm really settled here. I'm really happy where I am. I really don't want to do that, Lord. And then, you know how once he starts to say something, you just have to start to listen a bit more, don't you? And just bit by bit, I was like, okay, I surrender. And the day that I surrendered and said, okay, Lord, if you want us to go, I will go, the phone rings where we're sat, literally in that decision moment. And it's this guy at a church in North London saying, Anne, I've got a job for you here, same hours, same amount of money that you're on. Why don't you just come and join the team? And I was just like, Lord, are you kidding me? So that was amazing. So the book is very personal as well, a real honest journey.
Brilliant. So if you weren't here last year, this is the whole theme condensed into one neat little book. It's got a lovely feel to it. It's called Game Changers, Encountering God and Changing the World by Gavin and Anne Calver. And you might have heard of the guy that did the foreword. It's Malcolm Duncan. Anyone know him? There you go. Very good. So this is a great book to take away, and it's definitely on sale in the bookshop. Brilliant. I wonder if there is a book that you would point to that has been a game changer in your life. Maybe you had a decision that you needed to make, and just reading a book kind of reshaped the way that you went forward. Why don't you have a little chat around the table and see if you can find a book that helped you change your mind or change the direction of your life? We've got a great answer from the stage, so we'll share that with you in a moment. But has anyone on the floor got a book that changed their life, changed the direction of their life? Anyone got a recommendation for us? Yes, please, in red, and then I'll come to you in a minute, Ian. The Bible? Oh, that is the right answer. Round of applause. And can we ask which translation it was? No, I'm joking. The Authorized, okay. Very good. Excellent. Ian. Oh, the Ragamuffin Gospel by Brennan Manning. And not Bernard Manning, who's someone different. Yes. But a lot of people point to that book as being transformative. What happened to you? Oh, in God's army, only wounded soldiers can serve. And that was a key verse, key little line for you that changed you. This is Ian Matthews, and Ian heads up David C. Cook's work in the UK. And you need to know that the publishing industry in the UK, actually probably globally, is going through quite a tough time. Some of you might have followed the story recently with Lion Publishing. They are not going out of business, but they have been through a tough old time. And there's an appetite problem that Christians aren't reading in the same way that we used to. And there's a discovery problem. So people don't get book recommendations often in church. And so part of the Books for Life thing was to say, look, if you think reading's worth doing, let's try and change the culture. So DC Cook have been a great partner from the very beginning of Books for Life. And we need to really be supporting the book industry. And you can do that in a number of ways. One is buy books. Second is buy books to give away. I don't know if you were with us yesterday, but we just had an amazing story from Andy Hawthorne about a book that his mother gave him, and it changed his life, his brother's life, and his brother's girlfriend's life. And I'll put it on video after we're going home from Spring Harvest, because you will want to hear the story of that. But I often think about books I want to read, but how often am I looking around a bookshop thinking, you know what, I can think of 2 or 3 people that would be blessed if I bought this book for them. So you will bless other people, you will help the book industry, and God will bless you as you bless other people. So Ian, it's great to have you here. Right, now he probably doesn't need much of an introduction, but I would like you to give a great Spring Harvest welcome to Bob Hartman.
Thank you very much. And Ian said you left that behind. Okay. Oh, this one on top, apparently. Now, yes, I write children's books, so I brought cakes. Did you? There's a lovely lady at the back and her grandchildren, I think, and they're selling cakes. Money's going to a mission, so there's 4 cakes in here. So have one and pass it on. They're all homemade, already right here today. So, yeah, they're lovely. There's a Rocky Road thing in there, and there's a flapjack, and some kind of Malteser cake.
Bob, I'm not supposed to have favourite guests, but you're kind of up there now with this kind of cake thing going on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I do my best.
Bob, you told me a little bit of your story yesterday. Actually, it was 2 days ago. Oh. Tell us, just bring the audience up to speed with your call into ministry. I found that really powerful.
Well, I mean, initially I was studying English at university. I always loved to read, always loved to write, and yeah, I truly believed after the first year of university that God was calling me into ministry, but I still love the written word, and I still kind of saw that as my passion. So when I went away to seminary, I stumbled across this book, Frederick Buechner's Telling the Truth, The Gospel is Tragedy, Comedy, and Fairy Tale. And basically, Buechner had been a novelist before he became a theologian. And for me, the book just said that you could do both of those things together, You could write and you could communicate and you could love the words as well as trying to communicate the words. So it just pulled it all together for me. Yeah.
It's fantastic. I think the first time I ever came across you, you were reading the Bible in a way that just made the Bible come alive in a whole fresh way. You've just got a real gift of communication, but also just a gift of the gab with the words. So we're grateful to have you here.
Thanks.
You've written so many books, I've lost count. You probably haven't lost count. How many books have you written? And tell us about one of your latest ones.
I actually have lost count. It's over 70. I don't know how much.
Over 70?
Over 70.
Come
yeah.
on, that's a round of applause.
To be fair, your average picture book is only 32 pages long and less than 500 words. So actually, you know what I mean?
A book, though.
A book is a book. You know. I've got nothing on the Tom Wrights of this world, but I'm trying. I'm trying. He doesn't have any pictures in his book, so actually, yeah. All right then. Okay.
Tell us about one of the recent ones, so people can get a grip of it.
I'm going to hold this one up because we ran out of them. And what I'm trying to do is write Bible retellings for people of every age, for kids of every age. And my littlest grandson is 5 years old. So a couple of years ago when he was 3, I thought there wasn't anything where you could put him on your lap and you could open the page and you could actually do an interactive kind of retelling with him. So basically in the Play Along Bible, you've got a line of text and then an action that you can do with the little guy or the little girl on your lap. And you can do it with a small group of children as well, but it's aimed at preschool kids. It's incredibly interactive, and I did it with the under 5s yesterday, and it was just amazing. They were so lovely, but it's just a lovely way to, it's kind of like they're in your lap, so it's you and them, and there's the Word, and there's God, because it's His Word, and you're all there together in this lovely little package. And that's what this makes it possible to do. So, yeah, that's my favorite right now.
You've got us. We all want to do that now. So if you are a mum or a dad, if you're an auntie or an uncle, if you're a grandparent, what a great way to get closer to some of the children in our lives by sharing the Jesus story with them. And they're beautifully written because
the pictures are beautiful.
Bob is a wordsmith, but they've just got some lovely illustrations in them too. And do you know what? Particularly if you're a grandparent, often the grandparent generation are the most trusted generation. And the spiritual influence you can have on your grandchildren is huge. Even if, at this time, your children don't have faith, there's still another generation that you could kind of bless. So these are a wonderful resource. If you want to see Bob in action talking about how to help the younger generation get a vision for God, there's a lovely video we made with Bob in Cheltenham, and he's just infectious. He is just infectious. So it's on the Books for Life website, so go and visit that. Oh, that copy's yours, is it, already?
That's right.
I wonder if you can remember, back to your childhood, a book that you read that helped you discover a bit more about God. Can you remember that? Can you go back to your childhood? Or it might be a book that you've given to one of your children that's helped them discover God. Can you think of one? Let's talk around our tables and get some recommendations going. Okay. Yes, please. Oh, come on. Who is a Narnia person? Yeah. I read them when I wasn't a Christian and I didn't know. And then I became a Christian and they just had a whole new wonderful meaning. It was just fantastic. And same for you? Yeah. Amazing. Hands up, what was your first of your Narnia Chronicles? Did you all start with, hands up if it wasn't Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe? Oh, you did Magician's Nephew? Was it the same for you? You read them in order, very wise. I was a second-hand book guy, so I just got them in completely random order. And I think I might have prefigured... they're doing this kind of non-linear storytelling and a lot of... I think that was because of my childhood. I think that's what happened. Good. Any more suggestions for books that are great for kids to discover God through? Apart from Bob's, of course. Oh, yes, please. I can't even say it. Patricia St. John. St. John. Patricia St. John. Good. Excellent. One book that I can recommend that isn't Bob's, I can recommend all of Bob's, is the Jesus Storyteller Bible, the Jesus Story Bible, which is by Sally Lloyd-Jones. And again, it works for a certain age of child, but she takes the story of the Bible and each time is pointing you to Jesus. So she'll do Adam and Eve in the garden, or she'll do Abraham, and she'll always make a connection. And again, the words are great, but actually the illustrations are outstanding, and they're a wonderful gift. I think there's a special version you got David Suchet reading it, Feels like if there's a Bible, David Suchet's reading it somewhere in the world. But he has an amazing voice, so I'm happy to listen to him anytime that you want. Brilliant. Okay, we're going to go around our little group here, and then we're going to give you another chance to speak. We're just going to ask each of our guests for one book they would point to that helped change their life. And we're going to start with Tania. Tania, tell us about one book that changed your life.
Yeah, it's not here. It tends to... Larry Crabb is the author, and his books tend to be found more in America and Australia, but they can be found here. So the author is Larry Crabb, and he wrote a book called Inside Out. And it's a book that focuses not on what the external appears like, but what is the integrity of the internal. Now, I had come from, as I shared, an interesting early start in life, but I turned that around somewhat, and I'd ended up going into the corporate world and becoming relatively successful in FTSE 100 industry. So for me, it was all about what the image looked like, what the projection of self was like, how was I coming across, was I strong enough, powerful enough, important enough? And when I went to Bible college in Australia and read Larry Crabb Inside Out, I read it from cover to cover. It took me 13 hours. I could not put it down because it was the first time I realized that if I was to be a woman of faith for the long term, it was nothing about what I projected, but it was everything about what I was on the inside. And it turned my life upside down and inside out.
Has anyone else here read Larry Crabb's Inside Out? Oh, really? No one? Is it on the bookstore? Not as far as we know it? It is a great book. I've read that book. I must have read it in the 80s. Is it the 80s? Man, we're old. But it is a classic, and it is very disarming. I think it is still available. I think Authentic have republished it in the UK, so worth having a look at. Let's hear from Les for a book for you that's changed your life.
This book really helped me and inspired me. It's God on Mute by Pete Greig. And just an amazing situation, very real, very gritty. And a situation where Pete is obviously the head of a 24/7 prayer movement, but his wife has a brain tumor. And it's how they work that out together. So he's doing these like ministry events, and then he's coming home, and their ambulance will arrive in the middle of the night and take his wife to the hospital. But it was just an amazing story of how to stay strong in God, trusting Him, the power of prayer, and when you persist in prayer, God moves. And Sammy, his wife, is now very well and healed. So this is a great story.
Very good. Sammy, I think, was preaching for the first time in her church 2 weeks ago, and it was a very moving time. So it's a great book, God on Mute. Hands up, have you read that book? No? Oh, good. You've got so much fun. I've been enjoying, my older kids are now teenagers, and we're getting into box sets as a family, and it's really good fun. So I was being able to introduce them to box sets that they didn't know about, but I'm so excited they're going to uncover it with us. So we did the 40 Towers with them, and it was so much fun that they were going to enjoy, and they loved it to bits. And it's like that with a good book. You know, you want someone to have that experience that you've had. And if you haven't read some of the books we've talking about, you've got just wonderful things ahead of you. Oh, yeah, here we go. Pete Greig is one of the most talented and inspiring Christian authors in the world today. And his book, God on Mute, is a masterpiece. I cannot recommend it highly enough. That's by Nicky Gumbel. You know that guy? Nicky Gumbel? That's not a bad endorsement. There you go. I need to up the endorsements that people are writing about my books. I mean, that one, I want to marry Pete Greig now. That's fantastic. He's here next week, so marriage is possible. Oh, no, he is already married. Okay. So it is a fantastic book. You will love it to bits. Great. Anne, tell us about a book that's changed your life.
Okay, I'm glad that's gone on record, that, Krish. You want to marry? Brilliant. Has anyone seen this one, Artie Kendall? Prepare Your Heart for the Midnight Cry. That came out, I think it was 2016, was it? It's just, I'm not a big end times person at all. But what he does is just give you that sense of urgency, that sense of where am I at in my walk with the Lord, and how can I press in more to what he's wanting from me. And so he talks about the foolish virgins, and he talks about kind of oil in your lamp, and just personally, I just found that so helpful, just thinking, oh my goodness, come on, Anne, wake up to what I'm doing, and look, and scripture, the way he unpacks scripture. I mean, I think sometimes he's very straight down the line. He's much more straight down the line than I would be, but it's quite challenging as well. And if you kind of look at it and think it through and pray it through, it's just really made an impact. And he's 82. I mean, he's 82, and he's doing great things still, isn't he?
That's very good. You know what? You might have a book in you. You might think that you're too old to do it, but one of my favourite authors is a guy called Leslie Newbegin, and I did my study around him for my kind of final degree, and he wrote most of his best work after he turned 70. And so don't rule yourself out. There might be a brilliant book in you. I was just chatting to Adrian Plass, who was here earlier in the week, and him and his wife, they run writing workshops. And a lot of the people that come say, I don't think anyone will want to read my stuff. But every time when they do read their stuff in public, it's just so helpful. So who knows? You know, you might think, the best days for writing have gone. Actually, if R.T. Kendall can do it, if Leslie Newbegin can do it, maybe you could too. Let's hear from Bob, a book that's changed your life.
Right. I think I'm going to go with Tom Wright's Surprised by Hope. I don't think they have it here, but I'm sure they can get it for you. And for me, I had a really kind of unformed idea of what eternity was going to be like. My dad always thought it would be a lovely library because he was kind of really into reading as well. I knew I didn't want to sit on a cloud and pluck a harp for the rest of my life, or for the rest of eternity. I like harps. I got no problems with harps, but I thought there must be something more to that. You know what I mean? What's it all about? And at Spring Harvest, probably 10 years ago, is when we kind of focused on that book. And it just, it sort of just transformed my whole understanding, the whole new heaven and the new earth thing. And it even inspired a book. I wrote a book called Tapestry, which was kind of like N.T. Wright for 7-year-olds, which is a way of trying to bring it to life for kids as well. I felt it was so important for people to get this vision of God's new heaven and new earth. Jesus being the first fruits of the resurrection, and everything follows his example in the way it comes back together again, old and new, and all made magnificently over again by God. It's just a wonderful vision in the book. And if you haven't read Surprised by Hope, I'd highly recommend it.
It's very good. It's an excellent book. Weirdly, when I interviewed Tom Wright for Books for Life, he recommended one of your books.
Really?
No. But I wish he had. That would have been so cool. But I think
that would have been amazing. He absolutely loved Bible baddies. I knew there was something.
I think if there was a book off between you and Tom Wright, I don't think he's written 70 books.
No, but
I think he's got 50, but I don't think he's got 70.
Yeah, but his are like that, and mine are like that.
But a book's a book. If anyone has the capability of Googling, could you find out how many books Tom Wright has written? And we're not including when the American have a different name for the book than the British. It has to be a different book. Because sometimes Americans have different names for things, don't they?
Yeah.
And different spelling. Yes. I was gutted. My book, Paradoxology, which I quite like the cover of, the Americans changed it. Yeah. Why? Anyway, I don't know.
What do they know, Americans? Yeah.
Anyway, so in a book off, I reckon you would win this. But we're going to put it out to the internet to see what we can find out. I reckon one of my favourite books by you was Bible Baddies.
Oh, cheers.
I read that to my children. They must have been maybe 9, 10 and 11 at that time. Because our 3 eldest are 1 year apart, basically. 9, 10 and 11. It was so moving. I mean, it was so moving that, I'm the dad and I'm supposed to be helping the kids get ready for bed and, go to sleep. And I'm crying as I'm reading the book. So it was good. It was really good to show kids, men cry and all that kind of stuff. And they got to learn about the Bible. So thank you for writing that.
Very welcome.
Yesterday we did a bit of book surgery. And so there may be an issue that you would like some book recommendations for. So it might be that there's something you're struggling with, you'd like some input on. maybe you've got a big decision to make, or maybe you've got a friend that you think, oh, I wish I could give a book to them that would help them in their circumstances. And remember, we're thinking about becoming book givers, not just book readers. So just around your tables, could you try and think of a book dilemma that we can solve? You can come and tell me in a sec. A book dilemma that you want to solve, and we will bring our lovely guests to kind of help bring their wisdom and experience to help you. So just do that for a couple of minutes, and then we'll talk again. Has anyone got a dilemma they want us to solve with books? Yes. Okay, good. So if you're living with a non-Christian spouse and you'd like a book to kind of help them discover faith and that kind of stuff, anyone got a book recommendation into that space? That's great. I'm going to start with, going to go Anne, and then I'm going to go Bob.
I don't know, mate.
And you're a pastor. You must
That's
deal with this all
really
the
bad.
time.
Nothing's coming to mind. That's really challenging, isn't it? The Bible?
Yeah, his authorised version, we've got it nailed.
Gideon's Bible. Oh, I'm dropping him.
Oh, the
You
Bible's
already
already there.
have.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Bob, any thoughts?
You know, does the non-Christian spouse like fiction or non-fiction? Sorry? TV. The Shack again. You know what? What about Francine Rivers' Redeeming Love? All right, lovely book that's actually based on the story of Hosea. A wonderful, wonderful novel, but the heart of the gospel is right in the middle of it. What about something like that? I don't know. That might be a way forward, because it's not like right in your face, and yet it's pretty obvious what's going on in there. Yeah.
Just a bit of self-promotion, but it's not, honestly. We wrote this off the back of the pain of the journey of trying to have children. You know, that moment of, God, are you really there? So each chapter is kind of, what are the stumbling blocks? What are the things that might make you give up on faith more than discover faith? But what are the things? So the big questions, you know, when the feelings go, when people try and steal your faith, but real stories of people who've really wrestled with faith and struggled. So that might help if you wanted. That is in the bookshop.
That's good. I was surprised about some of the Christian content that's available on Netflix and Amazon Prime Video. So I was having my hair cut not long ago, and the guy that was cutting my hair was really excited about a movie he'd just watched on Netflix with his girlfriend. And he's a very cool guy, you know, drives a nice car, and, you know, he's got all the right kind of gear. But he was in tears watching a film about a girl who gets a disease and then falls into the middle of a tree. Do you know that film? What's it called? I can't remember. And I thought that was a really cheesy film. And yet for him, it was quite a breakthrough moment. Similarly, you know, the Bible series that was on Channel 5, I think, a few years ago, that's been available on Netflix for a while. And some friends of ours, he's a forklift driver and she works for social services. They watched that every night and found it incredibly powerful. And sometimes, you know, we're kind of cool Christians and we're a bit embarrassed about some of the Christian content that comes out. But actually, it can be a great open door for the gospel. So, you know, let's not be too sniffy about some of the stuff that's coming out. But for books, depending on the kind of questions they've got, if they're dealing with kind of, often the problem of suffering comes up a lot. We talked about that yesterday. There's a whole bunch of really good books on suffering. The Tim Keller one, Walking with God Through Pain and Suffering, is good. For a kind of general introduction to Christianity, you might want to go for Tim Keller's The Reason for God. That's really well written. It's really accessible. It's a great book for a Christian to read to understand their faith better. It's a really easy book to give away. But I wouldn't be too sniffy about some of the TV stuff. There's actually ways into the gospel through that. Great. One more opportunity for a dilemma that we might be able to help you with. And then I'm going to ask our guests for a final recommendation. Oh, you've got it. What's that film called? Miracles from Heaven. So I saw that film. It's got Jennifer Garner in it. And the acting from the little girl is excellent. The bit where she falls in a tree is a little bit weird. But the rest of the film is awesome. And any of you remember Third Day? Does that ring any bells? the lead singer from Third Day turns up in this film and starts singing. And it's awesome. It's awesome. So
He comes out the tree.
he does. He's not in the tree. It's not Third Tree. So it's a better film than you think, and really cool hairdressers. It's helped them on their journey to faith. So, and it's available from the bookshop. Thank you for going to get that. Let's give that lady a round of applause. Great. Anyone else got a dilemma that we can solve? Yes, please. Yeah. So moving on, dealing with things in the past. You might not have been here at the beginning when we were talking about Tania Bright's book, and I get no commission from this. Do I? No. Oh, okay. And this is called Don't Beat Yourself Up, Learning the Wisdom of Kind Soul. And honestly, Tania's story, it's a really powerful story, and the stuff she has to deal with, it's pretty heavy stuff. And so it's a great book. Actually, that Inside Out book we were talking would be good for that too. Anyone else got any suggestions dealing with stuff from the past? Oh, you might have stumped them. But we'll have a little look around the bookshop after if you want to come and have a wander. Brilliant. I'm going to go for last recommendations from my panel, and then we'll release you. Oh, you want to? What do you want? Oh, you want to do 10,000 Reasons? Yeah, good.
I just want to recommend this 10,000 Reasons book, and just basically this is the story of how God has used this song in many people's lives. It's a great read.
So that's Matt Redman's book about the song, and it is actually a very good read. There's an amazing story in there. I don't know if you saw it on the TV news. Yeah. There was a guy having brain surgery live on TV, like you do, because they were pioneering a new technique. And they wanted him to say something or to sing something in order to show that his brain was still working properly. So he's on the 6 o'clock news live, and he's singing 10,000 Reasons. And what a witness. It was just amazing. And that story's in that book, so it's worth a read. Anyone else got a... You want to go for one?
Yeah, I would love to discuss John Ortberg's Soul Keeping. Now, John Ortberg, as we know, is a fantastic author. He's written a number of books, one being If You Want to Walk on Water, Get Out of the Boat, another one being Everyone's Normal Until You Get to Know Them. But what I love about soul keeping... Why is she looking at you? Yeah.
We're going to sort this commission thing out.
What I love about this book is that it really helped me focus on actually things that we most forget, and that is our own soul. I think once we've been a Christian for a fair while, or a caregiver, or a youth worker, or a pastor, or a parent, or whatever that might be, we tend to sort of waylay on looking after ourselves, and we put a lot of other things before ourselves. This book has helped me remember that actually I am at my best when I'm looking after my own soul. It means I can be the best mum and the best friend, and actually ultimately the best daughter of the King, when I understand that my soul needs attention. And when I forget that, guess what happens? I become the worst mother and the worst friend. So I recommend this to you.
Excellent. Before I forget, one of the stall holders has come up to me and said that they've got a book that you can buy. It's not a book that you buy for yourself. It's a book that you buy to help someone in prison get access to some engaging stories about God. So that's called Fish and Chips, and 25 other sketches, and the Oddments Theatre Company are promoting those, so you can go and check that out. Anne, tell us about one of your books.
Has anyone seen this one? I found this really helpful. Everyday Supernatural. It's quite a recent one by Mike Pilavachi and Andy Croft from Soul Survivor. I think the main thing for me about this is, you know, sometimes you listen to speakers or you're aware of the supernatural happening, and it seems like it's it's happening there, and how's that going to become real for me? Like, and I just had some big questions over that. You know, actually, Lord, how do we hear you? And how do we know it's you? And how do we step out and begin to exercise our faith in a supernaturally natural way? And that's been so helpful, that book. If you just want to, all the stigmas, all the stuff to dress it up, it's just washed away, and it's just, you know what? It's me and the Lord, and stepping out the way that he's leading, so...
This is very cool because I think we've had at least 4 DC Cook books recommended from the front while the head of DC Cook is here, and that wasn't pre-planned. So be blessed, Ian. Good stuff. Bob, your last recommendation.
How many of you are Adrian Plass fans? Yeah. Okay, how many of you have heard Andy Kind, the comedian? He was here last night and the night before. Andy has written a comic novel called The Unfortunate Adventures of Tom Hillingthwaite, which I think is as funny as the stuff that Adrian does. It's hilarious. I mean, you know, people talk about not being able to put things down. That's how this was. It's about this guy who feels the call to be an evangelist, and he's the world's worst evangelist. He's terrible, all right? But it's hilarious, and it's also really moving, like the best of Adrian's stuff is. You get to points where he actually finds out stuff about himself and recognizes it's only through God's grace and actually the work of his wife in most cases that he's going to be able to succeed. So I'd really recommend this. It's really funny. It's really moving. The Unfortunate Adventures of Tom Hillingthwaite.
Fantastic. Well, we hope you've enjoyed your time with us. Today's the last Books for Life Café. Because we're planning to go home tomorrow. Is that right? Yeah, I know. But don't fear. There are more ways you can engage with books. One way is to visit booksforlife.uk, and you can hear all sorts of recommendations. And also on your tables is a little advertising for the Books for Life live event, which is taking place on the 10th of October in Cheltenham. And we've got an amazing lineup of speakers, including some of the people that we've been mentioning today. So get your tickets. I've got an early bird ticket thing going right now, so it's even cheaper than it says on the publicity, so get in there quick. Can I ask you to give a very warm welcome and thanks to our guests? And let's cheer the bookshop for all the work they've been doing. And feel free to make use of that bookshop right now. Have a fantastic afternoon. God bless you.